The Play Today Next Gen NFT collection is an Australian first. It's your chance to buy a digital collectible of one of golf's rising stars. 100% of all proceeds go directly to the player, so you can help a young golfer chase their dream. Head to playtodaynft.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 73 of The Thing About Golf, the podcast series from Golf Australia magazine that explores that eternal question. What draws people to this crazy and infuriating game? My name's Rod Morri and I'm glad you could make it for this episode because it's one that I've been wanting to record for quite a while. We think of professional golf as one amorphous mass, but the reality is there are two worlds of professional golf. There's the one we see on TV, the one inhabited by the players that we're all familiar with, but there's the other world of pro golf, which is intimately connected with that one, and that is the world of the coach. My guest on this episode is one of the best coaches Australia, or indeed the world, has ever known, and the proof of that is not only in his longevity, but the loyalty that his players have shown to him. So effective is Alex Mercer as a communicator that not only did Steve Elkington rely on him throughout his PGA Tour career, but flew to Australia with his own son, promising young amateur Sam for Mercer to impart his wisdom across generations. From David Graham to Michael Campbell, Brendan Jones and Steve Alker, Mercer has worked with some of the best players to emerge from this part of the world. But more important than that, he's helped countless thousands of club players to get more enjoyment out of the game. His philosophy is simple but not simplistic, his teaching easy to understand without pretending that the game's not complex. In short, he is a gifted coach. At the age of 88, Alex's health isn't what it used to be, but his passion for the game hasn't dimmed and his mind has not been dulled. And we, as golfers, are the better for it.
It's been a lifetime for me. I was brought up next to a golf course. Before it was actually built, I was born where the clubhouse now is at North Ryde. And then eventually somebody bought the ground, started to make a golf course, and my family were moved about 200 metres along until we got into Bridge Street, and we were the third house from the golf course. So with my older brothers all playing then, naturally once the golf started, and we had 8 kids and Scottish migrants, and one wage and no money, and my dad was doing well until the Depression came, and that flattened a lot of people. So we went and looked for golf balls, sold them to the members. We caddied if we could get somebody to, because the bags were never big in those days. They were only canvas bags with about 6 or 7 clubs most people used to use. And if they paid you a shilling or 1 and sixpence to caddy 18 holes, you're doing well.
We'll come back to that. Let's first clarify, you've sort of aged things there. How old are you, Alex, if it's not too rude of me to ask?
I'm 88.
88. And how many of those 88 years do you reckon you've been mucking around with golf and golf clubs?
Until I had this problem at the moment that's floored me, I'd say about 77 years.
And what is it then about golf? Can you put your finger on it? Why? I imagine you've had multiple interests that have come and gone over that time, but golf's remained a constant. Why?
Well, it was just part of our growing up. And my elder brother, Dave, who was pro at Killara for 42 years, he used to drag me out of bed in the early hours of winter morning, and the creek that ran along the middle of the golf course used to get sometimes a film of ice on the top.
Wow, here in suburban Sydney.
Yeah, and, that far west we used to often have ice in the hoses, but we used to break the ice on the top to jump in with short trousers and collect the golf balls, because when it froze overnight, the water went really clear and you could see the balls dotted on the bottom.
Right.
So we'd get those before anybody else arrived.
It's an early in the day.
So that's how we started the day in winter, and we had those balls polished up to sell.
Ready to sell to the members.
Threepence or sixpence or something to the members, yeah.
You mentioned there the Depression at the time, and which is an unthinkable thing, I think, for most of us who've been born after a certain time, the thought of what a depression was. What were those times like, and where does golf fit in that period in history?
Well, we were told that golf was a rich person's game. That's because most people that we knew playing golf had come from England or overseas. But in Australia, not a lot of people had a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So although it was still for the very rich by our comparisons here, they did encourage kids. I had an old chap I caddied for, and how I started, he bought a couple of hickory-shafted clubs out of his wardrobe because he said steel shafts were coming in. Mm-hmm. He wasn't convinced, but he thought they were coming in. And that's how I started to play when I was a little fellow, about 9 or 10.
It's on a bit of a side note, but that loss of the caddy as part of the golf landscape in Australia.
Yeah, well, buggies coming in took away a lot but the big clubs like the Australian and New South Wales, Royal Sydney, they used to have a whole team of caddies, and the members there were pretty wealthy often, and these guys made a living out of it. Plus, they learned a lot about the game. One of the important things about being a professional player was to have a good caddy. Mm-hmm. Take somebody who knew the game.
Still true, Alex?
Still true.
2022?
Still true.
It's the making of some players, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Some players mentally wouldn't make it without the caddy they've got. And others reading club selection under real pressure is a problem because you get pumped up, your heart rate goes up, and it's no trouble for a good player to take one club too much and fly the green, and he scratches his head and thinks, I can't hit a 6-iron that far, whatever club it was. But Arnold Palmer used to say that he could feel this coming on and he will automatically then take one more iron to the greens, or one less.
Because he knew.
Yeah, he would go for a stronger club.
Yeah.
Because he knew he'd be pumped up.
There's some things that we'll talk about playing the game and under pressure, because Bob Jones, of course, always said there were two types of golf. There was tournament golf and then there was all the other
Bobby
sort of...
Jones, yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Two different attitudes, although some people try to take it both ways, and I don't think that really comes out. I think you're either having a lot of fun out there with some members or you're playing the other guys for money. Although in my day when I first turned pro, even though you turn pro and you play in pro tournaments, we used to drive the cars we had then, weren't like they are now. We used to drive to places like Deniliquin, Parkes, Albury to play a pro-am for the weekend. And if you won first prize, you'd barely pay your hotel and your petrol. But we played to be the best player. We played to win the tournament. That was much more important to us than the money.
Was there we see this with the Ryder Cup captaincy. If you become the Ryder Cup captain, that doesn't pay anything. But having been the Ryder Cup captain, you can make a lot of money having been a Ryder Cup captain. Was there something like that that you were talking about in your day, or was it simply that legacy to be the best player or to have won the trophy?
Well, all of our good players in my day, like Kel Nagel, Eric Creeman, Norman Veneta, when they were young, they weren't going to make any real money playing here, but they had to build up a big enough name to be able to go and play in Britain and the European circuit. A few tournaments had started to grow. And eventually when America came in, and they took up golf a lot later than Australia and England and Scotland, they'd been playing for 100 years or more, 200 some of them. So when the whole world changed, and this might happen to other sports, was television. Mm-hmm. Because suddenly sponsors were prepared to put decent money up and bring world-class players to play in their event because they could get television advertising. But in the days before television, there wasn't a lot in advertising through golf.
It was a part-time job, wasn't it, being a professional?
was.
Most of the best-known names of an era would have a club job.
Everybody had club jobs. Yeah. Kel Nagel was at Pimble. And Billy Dunk eventually went to Fox Hills. My brother Dave, Frank Phillips, worked at Concord. He didn't have the main pro job, but I was at Royal Sydney after 5 years at Blacktown, where Blacktown was actually better because I could practice nearly every day out there. And then weekends it went like a circus, but
different customer base to Royal Sydney, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Imagine.
Yeah, but that didn't matter. I was used to that. So that's what I can look back and I can say that the whole world of golf changed when television came in for professional tournaments. There would have been no US PGA Tour. There'd have been no PGA Tour in Australia. No. I mean, what was the point of trying to get a tour going for players only when there was very little money coming in for advertising?
Hard to fill the field. Let's go back a bit, Alex. You mentioned that you, as a schoolboy, used to collect golf balls and somebody gave you some clubs. Had anybody previously in the Mercer family played golf? Because, of course, yourself, you mentioned your brother David, you had other brothers and a sister. I'm not sure that she played golf, but all of the others played, didn't they? And yourself and David both professional.
Yeah. My eldest brother, who got polio myelitis in both legs when he was a young boy, I remember caddying for him when I was about 11. He was in the B grade championship of the club, and he would hand me his crutches and I'd give him the club that he asked. He'd hit the shot and he'd give me the crutches. Oh, he'd give me the club back and I'd give him the crutches. And that's how we got around playing. And he still got to the final of the B grade championship. So they got, and my second eldest brother, Jim, he was the best amateur around Wyong, Central Coast for years. And he won quite a lot of tournaments and club championships there. And then, of course, there was Dave, and he played very well and became probably the benchmark for keeping a club membership happy and running the type of pro shop that his members wanted. Because he was there 42 years.
Kalara Golf Club,
Golf Club,
Sydney on the North Shore.
And they just loved Dave, and he earned their respect by providing a good service, good assistance. He was a good player and got his name up there every so often, and nearly always in the smaller tournaments he'd be somewhere near it. And the whole thing sort of grew from there. So Kevin, my younger brother, he was a good amateur, and my youngest brother, they were both good amateurs. They played for Rod Parramatta Junior Pennants when they were young, and Kevin was down to about 4 and didn't really apply himself enough, but he was a good player just the same. Plenty of ability, but there were more things in life for Kevin than playing golf.
If you don't want it.
That's right.
You got to want it, don't you?
That's right, yeah. Well, I did lots of other things, but golf was sort of in my blood. And but I enjoyed everything. I played a lot of other sports, and I enjoyed school.
Well, that's unusual.
But I love sport, but I love school. And
what about it? What about school did you like?
I just like learning.
Right.
I liked having other guys to learn to. So I played cricket at school. I played football. That's how I hurt my lower back playing football at high school in my final year. So playing rugby, but I enjoyed the whole lot to me. And then I had a scholarship to university, and I did enrol at law, and I worked at the State Crown Law Office and did my lectures at the law school on Phillip Street until I went into national service in 53. That's a long time, isn't it?
It is. Was that mandatory national service still in 1953?
Yeah, 3 months I had to do there. And then the other system afterwards, I went into that, where you had to go and do weekends and so forth. But
well, captain of the Fort Street High School, which is one of Sydney's more prestigious academic schools, actually, and always has been, hasn't it? So you were clearly no slouch in the academics.
No, I got through all the exams all right, pretty well, and I just loved it. There were so many good guys I met at school, and sport. You had to play sport at Fort Street. They were a great academic school, and you couldn't get there because you wanted to go. In your primary school, you had to do enough to sit for another exam to go there. Well, I did this partly because I loved school, and luckily for me, the good Lord put some brains inside me and I could do it. But my family didn't have a lot of money, so I won a bursary to go to primary school, opportunity school, that I won a bursary to go to Fort Street, and I won a bursary at intermediate, and I got a Commonwealth scholarship to go to university. So I had to work.
In a funny way, Alex, you've competed your whole life, be it academic or sport.
Whole life's been a competition. And I love sport because I love competition.
Yeah.
And golf, I'd come home from school at quite a young age, and I'd go straight out to the golf course.
To practice golf.
Of course.
What sort of age did it become obvious that golf was going to be your future, that it wasn't academic, it wasn't one of the other sports, that golf is what you wanted to do?
I wasn't sure. I was going to be a lawyer. First I was going to be a doctor, then I was going to be a lawyer. You go through all this when you're a kid. But I played golf. I just took it for granted. Golf was part of my daily routine. It was always there. I meet up with some of my old law school mates who were law students when I was. And one of them said, I would give anything on earth to do what you did.
Yeah.
But I couldn't play sport well enough. And I said, but look, you got a double-storey house down the Spit and a big boat, and you got drive a damn Mercedes car. He said, I'd give the whole lot away. He said, you don't have to flog yourself to go to work in the morning, do you? I said, no, I wait for the sun to come up and that's my day started. And he said, I go to work and I have for years. But he said, I have to make myself think of going to work and want to. And he said, many a time I don't want to. And he said, you don't have that problem. I said, no, that's the best place I know.
It's a bit of a cliche, Alex, and all of us would have heard it a million times, this notion of I'd give everything, and from people who've done very, very well in life. There's something quite serious in that, though, isn't there? You would have come across a lot of people. You've done a lot of coaching in your time, from touring professionals right to, I would imagine, handicapped golfers.
Oh, yeah.
And you would have met many successful, quote-unquote, people who were miserable.
Plenty. Well, they had to be miserable because they were so upset if everything didn't work out according to plan. And I don't think we're meant to have everything work out to plan and we'd all just frizzle up. The challenge is what keeps us going, I'm sure. And if people can't stand a challenge, and some of these people were born into big positions in their family, which I don't mind, that's good luck to them. But some of them had a different attitude to others. Some expected everything to be just put in their lap. And when they came for golf lesson, I knew quite a lot of people like that who would book a lesson, and I knew I'd have a different approach to them to what I'd have to somebody else. So part of my teaching was very quickly to understand that you can't teach anything. You teach the one person who's standing in front of you at that time. You can't teach him what's written in a book or what everybody thinks is correct, because the only thing that's correct is what works for you.
there's something very interesting in what you're saying there, isn't there? It begs the question, what is a coach? What is a teacher? Because you're right, there are textbooks, aren't there? There's been books written about all of the mechanical elements of the golf swing that produce a good golf shot, but none of it's actually got anything to do with playing golf, does it? No, in many ways.
No, well, I just had a chap last week came along. I hadn't seen him for years.
You're still teaching, Alex? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, no, people now and again ring me, and I've had pupils that I've taught 30, 40 years ago.
Wow.
And Steve Elkington still sends stuff across on the computer for me if he's going to go and play golf anywhere. At his age, it's just invitation to play and things with older people, seniors. But he's still serious. He still wants to play well. So
he's a competitor, isn't he?
Yeah.
If he's playing,
he was born with it. Well, that's why I
serious,
picked him out at about 13 years of age as a future player, because he could play as a kid better than he should have been able to at his age. But apart from that, he hated losing like poison. And I thought, well, if you hate losing enough, you'll probably be a winner in the end. So he wasn't a bad-tempered guy, and he wasn't. He had his moments, but he wasn't a sort of a guy where it beat him. It made him better. As good as he was, the thing that made him get a little bit better than most of the other kids was he wanted to win more than they did. And he didn't do anything nasty or fight them. He just, it was something inside him that said, no, you can do better than that, boy. And I love that.
Most people, if they were to talk about Steve Elkington, Alex, would have pointed to his swing, which is held up by so many people as just such a beautiful mechanical motion. It is. It's a beautiful thing to watch, but you didn't. You picked out something else about him, which is interesting.
Yeah, but we worked on the swing too, because he had also the other thing that caught my eye immediately. He had a sense of rhythm and a sense of balance that you can't be as good as he was if you didn't have that.
Can you learn that? Can that be taught?
Yeah, well, I think if you go to the right coach and the right teacher, you can see teaching, I think, is putting a picture in somebody's brain, making them practice till that picture is clear, and then making them forget it, so that when they played, they were playing golf. They weren't thinking something out of a book or a theory. So I've got that. I reasoned out very early in my own golf, and I could play. I could hit the ball all right. A few things went wrong. I had a lower back surgery when I was about reaching my best, and that was the time, 1961, when Von and Devlin and I died. But I was sort of having some good rounds, virtually anything. So, and my back, that was a football injury from high school, and that came back. And I found after I had the operation for that, I got strong again, but it was too hard to practice as hard as I wanted to practice. And then I got a club job at Royal Sydney, and they wanted me to teach. The teaching became so popular down there for me that I had about 4 or 5 weeks in advance. I'd be booked every day from 8 o'clock till knock-off time.
16 lessons a day.
Some days, because the members demanded it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go out and practice, but I couldn't. So
your own golf suffered, no doubt.
So that doesn't do you any good with your golf, but it was what put me on my next part of my career, because I still wanted to play, but I couldn't play if I didn't practice enough. I could play, but I couldn't play well enough to do what I should be able to do. But I loved the teaching once I got into it, and I found I could make people play better. And I got a few pros. David Graham came to me, and that's when he really was struggling. And we worked very hard with David for a couple of years until he was right, and he took off and did his own thing. And he's still the only Australian to win 2 majors in America. So he was a success out of hard work. He was reasonably talented, nothing like Elkington was very young, but his work ethic was mind-boggling.
Well, he switched from left to right-handed, did he not?
Yeah,
quite late.
Before I knew him.
Yeah, quite late in a playing career in that sense.
Yeah, well, that's right. When he was about to turn pro, I think.
Yeah.
But no, he was struggling, and he came to me. I was playing in the Australian Open at Royal Queensland, and I had never met him. He knocked on my motel room one night, and I was just about to turn it up and be ready for the next day. And he said, I'm David Graham, so forth, and we met. And he said, I need help with my game. I want to play better. I can't he said, a lot of people have given me advice and I'm struggling. He said, I watched you play today and I want to hit it like you hit it today. Wow. I said, all right, I can't promise you that, and I haven't seen you play. But when we go home, you ring me at Royal Sydney and I'll find time for you. And that's how we started. And when we started, I thought, well, this kid's got some good things. But his game technically needed a fair bit of understanding. He didn't really know clearly what he was trying to do. That's the way I read it. And I gave him a few things to work on. I said, well, I want you to get yourself some decent practice balls. I want you to go home, and then when you practice that hard enough, I want you to ring me, come back next week. We'll make it a weekly thing. So he came back, and he had started to improve a bit, and the next time he came back, a couple of weeks later, I was out in the front of the shop and he was on the back bench with a Stanley knife. He was paring calluses off his hands.
Oh, wow.
I said, what are you doing with your hands? You can't play golf. What are you doing off the golf course? He said, I'm doing nothing. I said, well, how do your hands get like that? He said, well, I get up early and I take my practice balls and some clubs down this paddock he had, or open space he had down near Cronulla somewhere in those days. And he said, I hit the balls and I pick them up and I do what you tell me to practice, and I do that and I pick them up again. He said, lunchtime I go home and I have a lunch and a drink, and then I come back and I do that all afternoon. I said, every day? He said, yes, every day.
Wow.
I thought, well, this guy,
driven.
At his age, he was only about 23, 24. I thought he's got to make it. It doesn't matter what I tell him. He's going to make it if he does that.
So somehow, somewhere. Does that work for everybody?
No, it doesn't work for everybody.
Not everybody's wired that way, are they?
No, not everybody. But see, he was like Steve. He had what Steve had, only more so. He said to me, I have to be successful at golf. There's nothing else I know how to do.
Right, that's it. It's this or...
This or nothing.
Yeah.
So he decided that was it, or he was finished.
Quite the motivator, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's a good motivator. I didn't argue with him. I thought, well, fair enough. I've never seen anybody practice like he did, ever.
It's easy in the modern game, I would think, for somebody who can really play, particularly a young person, to follow a lot of dead-end roads. There's a lot more information probably available.
Too much.
Exactly. What advice would you give a young player of how to navigate all that, particularly with the money in the game, where there's a lot of sharks in the pool, isn't there?
Yeah, but the more you fill your head, you're given by what happens, by the way your body's put together. You're given between about 1.5 and 2 seconds to start your backswing and finish your follow through. Now, you've got to find out for you personally, how many things can you learn and think about in that time? That's the first question I ask. Mm-hmm. And they say, oh, not many. I say, well, you're just like everybody else. The greatest genius in the world can't think of the number of the things that people are trying to tell you to think of during your swing. At the same time, hit the ball. And they say, well, what's the most important thing for me to remember? I said, you've got to visualise what you're going to do. And the first thing you've got to then do is learn how that feels. Because you can't visualise something you've never done. So it's no good you standing on the fairway saying, I'm going to hit a soft fade 5-iron into this green. If you've never hit that shot, you're wasting your time standing there staring. You might as well be staring into space. So you've got to learn to hit all the shots that count by finding out how to do it and by standing on the practice fairway. I'll stand there, I'll tell you. But when you've really produced that perfect shot, the most important thing is to remember in here what it felt like. The words I give you might help you, but your image that you've put straight into your brain, because it wants you to do it again, your heart wants you to do it again. If you've never seen it, you don't know what you're looking for. So you learn to play the shots that you require, and you learn how to, and you practice until you can do it over and over again. Then the best thing then is to forget how, because you've only got to look at the shot on the course and your brain says, I remember how to do that. Bang.
Surely, Alex, that is far too simple for a world full of technology and
Yeah, well, that's
trackman.
I've had a young fellow came to me from years ago from the Australian. He would have been a good player. His father took him away from me because he said I was too simple.
Too simple.
I said, that's good. I don't know how to complicate it anymore, because golf on the course is not an academic game. It's a practical game. The golf ball, as I've told some people, the golf ball doesn't go to university.
No.
It doesn't read biomechanic books. It goes where you hit it. I don't care whether you cross your legs or what you do. If you hit it where you want to hit it, you're a good player.
Yeah, especially if you do it time and again and again.
That's
and
it.
again. And always hit it where you want
so
to.
that your brain can picture that shot straight away.
Yeah.
Oh, I know how to do that. Well, the snake was writing down how to do it. This tells your hands what's going to feel like.
The Play Today Next Gen NFT collection is an Australian golf first. Featuring Blake Windred, Grace Kim, Harrison Crowe and Kelsey Bennett, it's your chance to buy a digital collectible of one of golf's rising stars. 100% of all proceeds go directly to the player, so you can help a young golfer chase their dream. Head to playtodaynft.com to find out more.
As a coach, Alex, and you've helped a lot of good players become better players. We had Brendan Jones on this very podcast a month or two ago. He still talks reverently about the help that you've given him.
He rang me last week
so
from
long,
Japan. Yeah.
In fact, he told me the same thing about you. He said, oh, no, we've never talked about anything technical with Alex. He just fixes my rhythm and then it works for me. And he plays, well, he's a fabulous player, as
He
you
is,
know.
yeah.
Is the danger as a coach, I imagine, there's a responsibility, isn't there, not to mess up somebody like Cameron Smith, and a temptation in the modern era for
it's a
coaches, I would
danger.
think.
It's a danger.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that and how you kind of avoid that.
Well, you can't avoid it. You can as the coach. You can in your own mind, you can look at a fellow and you can work out if there's a weakness that produces a particular shot that he's unhappy with and he wants you to help him. And you can see there's a little weakness in some of the technical part of his swing or his grip or his posture or whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a million things. But you can't teach him that and three others at the same time. You've got to make him understand how that one little thing connects to all the other things that happen subsequently. And if you can do that, then he's got a very simple plan. He knows this will connect to all that as long as he does this, the very first thing. But you can't say what I know. You can't say if he does this, it's going to do that, and that. I don't want him to think of all that. I've got to know it. Otherwise, I wouldn't pick out the key thing if I didn't know how it was going to transpose into the swing. But if you try to tell the pupil every technical reason why everything he's doing, well, how's he going to fit it in 1.5 seconds?
Some people demand it, though, don't they, Alex? They
Oh,
demand
yeah,
that you tell them from A to Z, every point of what they're doing.
Like
and
that.
what you're gonna-
Well, I'm afraid, look, I'm not a nasty fellow. I know I can do my job. I know all people can't learn to play golf. I know some of them can't because they get in their own road. I think it's marvellous when I was playing with members, when I was teaching members and then playing friendly games with them, I know that their game they talk about over a couple of beers in the clubhouse later is a far better game than they play on the golf course. I mean, they could bedazzle me with technique and science and have just shot 90 off the stick. So obviously knowing all that is great fun. That gives them a great feeling. Mm-hmm. But they can't play because of it. The best guys learn to play when they're young. They do their hard work on the practice range. They pick up as much knowledge as required to produce the shots they want. And that's all they need technically. Then they need their head trained for golf.
What do you mean by that?
Well, people have said to me, I've run clinics in a country town and a big club one day in Victoria. And this guy said, Ben Hogan said it was all left-handed. Mind you, I think he had a few pints.
Right.
I said, no, I'm sorry. I said, Ben Hogan said that if he was born again, he'd like to have an extra right hand. That's what he said. I said, it's not because his right hand was crippled. It's because he was sick of people saying you play one-handed. So what he was saying is if you're right-handed, you shouldn't be trying to eliminate it. You should use it. Mm-hmm. And this guy sat down and everybody in the room sort of looked around. And that's the sort of thing people think. And you just got to be... And somebody said to me, a woman got up and she said, well, we've listened here and it's been absolutely marvellous. But she said, now what's the worst fault in golf? Because you teach all these different people and pros. What's the worst fault you've ever seen? I said, and I was thinking, I said, doubt. And the whole room stopped dead. There wasn't a breath you could hear. No, she said, no, I want to know what's the worst fault. So I just told her, doubt. To a reasonable player who's got a reasonable swing and can hit good shots, why he can't do it in a tournament or under pressure is because he still has an element of doubt. So if you can eliminate the doubt from a player's mind of being playing a shot under pressure or anywhere on the course, you've made a big move forward. So one thing I say to all my pros playing for money, you don't play a shot in doubt and you don't second guess yourself. If you looked at the yardage and you've looked at the wind and you've looked at the lie and you think it's a 6-iron, you hit a 6-iron. You can't hit a 5.5 or a 6.5 because there's a lingering doubt. If it's wrong, you're human.
That's why you got a short game.
You got to play short. You got to be a good chip and putter, yeah. But you can't play seriously well with doubt in your mind about your own ability to produce the shots, or if you've got any ability like some people. And I watch it on TV. This fascinates me. I don't say anything to Shirley, but no, she's not like this. No, I wouldn't. I'd be in trouble. No, but they ask these. They give them an alternate 3-question answer, and they pick one of the 3 answers out as the correct one. And they'll mention one straight off, but then they'll mention maybe the other one is, and then they'll pick the second or third one they've been given. But the first one that they brushed over is always correct.
Always the right one. Yeah, gut feeling, instinct.
Yeah, well, golf's like that. You know, if you make up your mind that it's a certain shot, even if it's not, you're better off to go with what you think.
I've often thought, Alex, that golf should be renamed Easier Said Than Done.
Oh, yes.
It's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, it's hard, and I'll tell you why it's hard too, and why all the this is just my this is what I've lived on in my work. it's futile having, I'll tell you a little story in a moment. It's futile having biomechanics, physics, and all these sciences into a golf swing, because on the golf course you have downhill lies, uphill lies, left foot higher, right foot higher, all the way around on some courses. You don't have one level stance. Now, how do the mathematics stand up if you try to build that machine on a non-level stance? So your imagination, your feeling, is what cuts one foot off from what's happening and adds to the other one. I mean, your body is the same as walking up and down stairs. If you had to stop and think about the mechanics of lifting your left foot up and then your right foot up the next step, people would break their neck. There'd be dead people all over the place.
The stairs would be full of people lying on there.
It would be, yeah.
You said you were going to tell a little story. What was the story?
Oh, a little story. I had a chap one day, and I hope he doesn't hear this. He won't anyway. He came for a lesson, and we had a little lesson for about 5 or 10 minutes, and worked out. He was pretty good, and I just said, look, there are two things that I'd go away and practice if I were you. I'd practice this and I'd practice that, and I showed him why. Then he hit a couple of balls, they went nicely. And then he said, look, he said, I'm a surveyor or an architect or something, and that doesn't make sense because of this, and this, and this, and he went on and on. And I said, look, you're paying me for half an hour. Now, I've just had 20 minutes of lesson that I'm not paying you for. So there's something wrong here, because you're going to pay me for half an hour and you've had 5 minutes. But I'm not paying you and you just give me 25 minutes. So either you want to learn to play golf or I want to learn to be a whatever it is. And he stood there and he was a member of a major club too. But I just had enough of this, and I thought, and they read books and they listen, and then they've in their own business they try and link it in. And I felt like saying, how do you want 5 minutes for each swing? This. The ball won't wait.
It'll get old.
Well, I have never had a golf ball out of the packet yet that's been to university. Never.
The day you do is the day we should probably all give up. You mentioned the lady earlier who asked about the biggest fault, and you said doubt. What's the biggest, and you must have come across this a lot of times, people who've taken up the game perhaps a bit later in life and become obsessed with the game, convinced that they've got to get better at it. What are the dangers in that? You would think that should be a very good attitude to take into improving golf.
Yes, as long as you don't go and have to listen to this chap and listen to something on television and then look at your computer and pick up something else and then go down the street and have lessons from somebody else. Because while you're doing all this trying to get better and better, because you're trying to get more and more knowledge into your head, you may get harder and harder to play. Because the one thing you forget totally, and these people do, I know, I teach you, they forget. The most important thing of all is to bring the club face back to the ball in the right position to hit it. So they're thinking of elbows, shoulders, turning their hips, doing this. But I said, what part of your swing did you remember to drive the face of the club back against the ball square? They just open their eyes and look at you. And I say, well, that's 90% of the game. The rest you're allowed is 10%. But 90%, you've got to be determined and pumped up to hit the ball properly on the face of the club. You can't play if you don't do that. So they think if they have all these movements but they don't know where the club head is, they can play. No way.
The wrong way around.
It's the wrong way around. And that's why in every club in Australia that I've been to, over the world probably the same, you'll get a guy walk in who lives out of town, doesn't have any pros around him to teach him.
No phone, no computer.
No, goes and hits a few balls down the paddock now and again, and he's got a natural instinct, a natural coordination to bring the club face through the ball square. And this guy will walk out without any knowledge and he'll win the club championship or something. And it happens everywhere. Yeah. And the guy just knows how to do it. He's picked up the most important thing of all. Yeah. If I'm balanced and I've got a bit of rhythm going and I bring the club head back to the ball in the right position, it'll go straight.
You're absolutely right. I think about the club champion of 20-plus years at the last club I was a member at. Could not tell you how he did it, and it didn't look terrific as a golf swing to watch, but it went where he looked.
Well, that makes him a good player,
That's right. He chipped it in 3 times around. Occasionally he'd shoot 7 or 8 under off a handicap of 2 or 3 around the little course. He could play golf. He could play golf. Couldn't tell you anything about golf. Wasn't all that interested in golf beyond his own weekly game, but he could play golf.
Yeah, well, he had a lot of fun, didn't he?
Yeah, very much.
Playing the game. So his challenge was to get it around the course with a good score.
Yeah.
Some of people take up the game, and I think the challenge is to have a perfect swing. But nobody knows what it is. I was in America with Elkington at a place called Oakmont. It's a great course.
Difficult golf course.
Great golf course, yeah. Downhill green.
Yeah, that's right.
And a putting green near the clubhouse,
the 9th green and the putting is all one big surface, isn't it?
Yeah. And Ben Hogan was reputed years ago to be the only one who mastered it, but the other fellow who won the British Open, the American youngster, I'm getting old, I've forgotten his name, but he had a great score to win a tournament there.
Johnny Miller?
Johnny Miller,
Shot
you've
63.
got it. Yeah, you're my history man.
There's a lot of people know a lot more than me, trust me.
No, but this course, it's just a marvellous course there. But the pro, he was on the teaching committee. This pro, I don't know whether he was a pro at that course, he was a pro anyway. And he walked down and introduced himself. And he said, "Do you mind if I take a video of you working with Elkington?" I said, "No, not in the slightest." So he got over there with a camera and I was just tuning Steve up. A couple of things I wanted to remember. And then he said, "Look, there are about 20 pros along here. How about we walk along and have a look at them?" I said, "All right." And every single one, when they hit the ball, you'd think he should win the tournament.
Got to be the best player in the world.
Every single one was hitting these magnificent shots, everybody. And we got to the end of the line. He said, "Who do you think's got the best swing?" I said, "I'll tell you on Sunday night." He said, "What?" So "I'll tell you on Sunday night." He said, "How come?" I said, "Because on Sunday night they're going to give the biggest check to some guy. And if he hasn't got the best swing for him this week, he should give it back. Because they're only going to give it on the scores. They're not going to give it on a swing or that you or I think is good. He's made his swing work this week, that guy. That's where he gets the money."
Yeah.
And this guy just shook his head walking away. He said, "Australians won't give you anything." That's what he said.
Why do you think we as golfers are so obsessed with the aesthetics of the golf swing? You would have heard lots of people.
Balance and rhythm.
Adam
That's
Scott, Steve Elkington,
had.
Absolutely.
He was born with it.
Yeah.
He could play any sport and he'd look the same. He had that balance and rhythm to do things that made it look easy. Yeah. But he and I worked very hard. It was good when I started with him, but he got better.
You said there you were tuning Steve Elkington prior to a big tournament, so clearly he was a long-time professional at this age. What does that mean? What do you do with a player like Steve Elkington as a coach, or a Brendan Jones, or a Peter O'Malley?
Well, with my players, I know what to talk about that is good for them to get in their heads. And it's a bit sneaky sometimes because they ask you about a swing, but you're sneakily putting a bit in their heads about some thought that's going to be important on that particular course or something, and you don't want to make a big issue of it because you want them to have as much freedom in their mind as they can. But tuning up is every good player has got some little thing sometimes that'll creep in. And I'll just watch Steve hit and I'll say, "Well, how have you been lately when you've had to hit a fade off the tee?" And he'll say, "Well, I haven't been managing it too well." And I'll say, "Yeah, this is why." All right. So we'll hit a couple, just hit them down there and leak away. That works good. I say, well, that's it. You've forgotten that. And that'll be today's tuning up.
Tuning up.
See, when he won the Open at the Lakes, he hadn't played on that new course at the Lakes. And he came back from America, and I've been asking him for years to come back and play in the Open. But we sat out after the game, and I said, now you can win this tournament if you can hit a 1 iron or a 2 iron or a smallish club all the way around the back nine and learn to hit shots a little fade, because all the trouble's going to be on the left on almost every hole, and most of the holes, the length you hit the ball, you don't need a driver if you're in doubt. If you look down and you don't feel comfortable with the driver, take a 3-wood, take a 2 iron, but hit it on the fairway, because if you hit these fairways, you're going to be a threat. So he said, all right, we got in a practice fairway the next morning at the Lakes. And he said, I was thinking last night when I went to sleep, I've got to hit, on all these tee shots, I've got to hit with a little fade. I said, yeah, every one of them. It's the safest way to play the back nine, and that's the trouble line. All the water that you can kill yourself with is going to be on the left on most holes. Or at least if it's on the right, you can aim down the left and fade onto the fairway. So he said, all right, and how are we going to do that? The balls were there. I said, it's a funny thing you're asking how I can do. He said, oh, I can fade a shot, but to stand up confidently and know I can fade it off the tee, what do? I said, all right, hit a shot. I said, can you feel how much you turned your hips through the ball? He said, yes. I said, how about we turn them a little bit quicker and a little bit more? And he hit this fade. I said, I want you to put one thing in your head. The more you turn left, the more you're going to hit the ball to the right. The hardest thing to do is hit it left if you turn left before you strike it. All right? Not up here. I'm talking about his legs and hips. Mm-hmm. So he got around the back nine every day in under the card by quite a bit. And he played the front nine pretty ordinary for a bloke that won the Open. The front nine should have been easy for him. But he played a couple of silly shots in the front nine. But the back nine, he killed it every day. And he was out there. I was watching him. He was having a practice swing, and he was just giving a little bit more of a tweak through with his bottom half, and the ball was going.
Doing what?
He said to me later, that's a good rule, isn't it? He said, if you want to hit it, if you want to stop hitting it left, turn left. I said, that's what you got to say. Yeah. So he's telling his son, young Sam.
He's a very good player himself.
Yeah,
looks of things I've seen.
He brought him out here for me to teach him.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. Sam wouldn't listen to anybody else.
Right.
He's whoever taught my dad's good enough for me.
That is delightful to think that's happened. That Steve's son wants you to help him with his golf.
Yeah, well, he won't turn pro because he won't be as good as his dad. But he's a good amateur and he's got a good job.
Yep.
And I said to him, if you've got any doubts about playing for money, make a life for yourself, get a good job, work your way up in your company until you get to the top where you can afford to play when you want to.
That's right.
And we'll still practice on your game. Yeah. Then at some stage, if you're good enough, you can turn the corner and play pro tournaments too.
You can make a lot of money being good at golf without turning professional in America.
You
get into that finance world, and if you can play golf, you can make a lot of money just by being able to play golf.
Yeah.
It's, oh, Steve, he having it? Shirley's just mentioned Alex ran the national coaching in New Zealand for about 19 years, and Steve Alker was a pupil of his. People who'd not heard Steve Alker's name before perhaps weren't close followers, and they certainly know it now. What a second life he's having as a senior.
Well, he could always play as well as he can now, virtually, almost. He got older, but he's stronger now. He hits the ball stronger. But I got him in a school, a national school, when he was too young to be there. But the officials of the Amateur Association, they said, this kid, we want you to put him in. There's a reason we want you to put him in. So I put him in the school, and I realised straight away he was a tenacious little so-and-so with a real good swing, a good natural swing. So then we had some fun, and I used to put him with these big guys who thought they could play, and he would embarrass some of them when they went around the afternoons playing. And he's a good kid.
Good kid. He's 51.
Yeah,
51 and made about $3 million this year.
Well, if you're 88,
well, I suppose that's true.
He's
You
a
make
kid.
a good point. Yeah, you make
Everybody's
a
a kid to
Everyone's a
me.
kid when you get to 88. That's fair enough.
no, but he rang me some time back when they were playing at Moona Links,
Yep.
and he had rung me from New Zealand. He had come down to Royal Sydney first, and I spent a few hours with him there. And he came down to Moona Links, and I arranged to see him on the practice range there. Then he went home the following week and won the New Zealand PGA. So, and he's such a terrific little fella. He played Eisenhower Cup in France. I know because I took all the New Zealand teams to their Eisenhower Cups for about 12 years,
Okay.
including when they won the only time.
Campbell.
In
what,
10.
Michael Campbell.
Campbell.
Who was on that team?
Scarhill.
Yes, Stephen Scarhill. And
Scarhill.
Tatarangi.
Yeah, good
One on the
player.
PGA Tour and commentator now. You hear him quite often.
Yeah, good bloke. Phil, lovely little bloke. Yeah. And they all came through from juniors right through with me until Eisenhower. Then they turned pro. And Michael Campbell won the US Open. He came along as a youngster too. He came along in fancy duds, and he was a song and dance kid. He used to go down doing shows when he was a young kid. And he was good, but he didn't appear to be as talented as some of the others. But he had such a way about him that if things worked out, he was above the world. He was
A performer in many ways.
he's a performer. If things were working out and he was going well, he would really thrive on that.
Yeah.
So I was state coach for the New South Wales amateur team for 32 years.
Wow.
And
You've seen some players over
so
that
I've
time.
seen a few through. And at the same time I coached Brisbane, the Queenslanders,
At the same time as you were coaching New
for
South
3
Wales.
or 4 years, yeah.
Goodness me.
And I did the South Australian ladies team. I used to go over to Western Australia to work with them and do a lot of golf schools for them to get them going. And Graham Marsh came through those schools, and quite a few of the top players. And then I was doing New Zealand. Not long after that, they came from New Zealand and begged me to go over and do it there. So then I had a full scale coaching stuff, so I had nothing else to do. I didn't have time for anything else virtually.
Lots of good players, Alex, would find the idea of trying to teach other people, and particularly handicapped golfers, they'd rather extract their own teeth without anaesthetic than put up with that. And B, many of them wouldn't actually be very good at it. What do you think's the difference been for you? Why do you think, because you were a good player and you've been an even better coach, I would suggest?
And well, I was forced into coaching full time when my injuries and stuff and my obligations to get money for my wife and children, to me, that was more important to me than it was winning golf tournaments. So I just went along the track that my heart wanted to go. I would have loved to have had nothing better to do than go and practice to become better and better. But I'd seen it. I'd beaten the best players in the world on a good day, and I'd played with them and against them.
Who did you play? It's a privilege to be a professional golfer for a living, isn't it? It really is. It's a very privileged lifestyle to have that opportunity. Who did you play with over the years? Because you did play with some
I played
really
with
big
just about all of them, at different times. Arnold Palmer, he came and gave Shirley a kiss at the British Open.
What a surprise that must have been for everybody. Arnold sweet-talking the ladies.
Yeah, he was a champion. And Kel Nagel, see, I wagged school to watch Kel Nagel play an exhibition with Bobby Lockett at Concord.
Wow.
Yeah, my headmaster at school gave me 10 shillings to get in.
Is that right?
He said, you can pay it back when you come back.
Fantastic.
Well, I didn't ask. They called me out of class, and I thought, what have I done wrong? Because it was a pretty strict school.
Yeah.
Now, what have I done wrong? I was in school uniform and everything. He said, no, you should be at Concord Golf Club. I just read the paper, and there's a big exhibition on golf today. Mr. Nagel and Bobby Locke from South Africa. He's a world-famous player. He said, and I think you should be there, because I had just won the schoolboy championship.
Wow.
And they were pretty proud of that at the school. And I was 15, I think. So he gave me 10 bob so I could get the bus and I could get there.
Wow.
So I walked round Concord at 15 watching Bobby Locke play Calnagel.
What did you make of Bobby Locke? There wouldn't be too many left who'd seen Bobby Locke play in person, I wouldn't think.
Oh, no.
Who
Well,
know a bit about the game.
Well, see, he had what Ben Hagen called ball control. Kel would hit it 50 yards past him. And Kel was a magnificent striker in those days. That's before he went to England and decided to cut it all back and just go down the middle. He was pretty good at that. But
they called him the Crusher, didn't they? The Pimble Crusher.
Crusher, they called him.
Right,
yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Those
that's
days,
Big
he was.
hitter.
Oh, he was mind-boggling, and it wasn't that long after they came out of the army. Say 1945. Well, this was about 49 or 50.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them just had to make their way back into what they wanted to do. And
what a tumultuous time. I wonder, Alex, do you think it was easier or more difficult in the past? We see how much money's in the game now, how much assistance is available if you're a talented youngster, the access you get to technology and to coaches and to all of those things. In some ways, has it made it more difficult to be successful as a player?
It's a numbers game purely now. And the golf club manufacturers have changed the game because the public want to see people hitting it a long way. If you tell somebody to buy a new set of golf clubs and hit the ball 20 yards further, they'll sell their house to buy them.
They'll buy them, yes.
Now, the golf club manufacturers, right at the end of when I stopped playing seriously, I suddenly found the standard set of clubs was already going up in length. Because I used to use clubs about an inch and a half longer than standard. I was a bit taller than I am now. And I didn't need them anymore because I'd get a new set of clubs made and I'd ask them to make them an inch longer, but I didn't need it because they were bringing the shaft length up.
It was already getting longer.
And then the loft, I've got up in my old shed up there, heaps of old golf clubs and stuff I couldn't part with. They got a little bit of something special about them. But I looked at a 5-iron in a set up there the other day, and it's a dead set 7-iron in the new clubs. So, oh man, the 7-iron in the,
yeah, absolutely. It's got the 5-iron loft these days.
Yeah.
What used to be a 5-iron is now a 7-iron. There's no question of that.
And that's why when they hit the ball, like I look at these US tournaments, they will hit 3/4 of the par 4s with a 9-iron or a wedge. They'll even hit par 5s with a what do you call the thing in between a wedge and a pitching wedge?
Gap wedge.
Yeah.
But more important than that, Alex, they now have a sense of entitlement where they're staggered if there's a par 5 that can't be reached in 2 shots. And there's many players who believe that's unfair.
Yeah, that's just, they reckon. They should have. I tell people, I say, if you could get a set of the old clubs that we I don't mean mug clubs, I mean real good clubs.
Yeah, proper clubs.
That we played with like 45, 50 years ago, and use a balata-covered ball with a wound centre and see how well they play those courses. It's a totally different game.
The best players would adapt pretty quickly, would they not?
Oh, yeah.
They'd figure it out in 5 shots.
They'd figure out to take more club, and they'd figure out that the ball was going to move a lot more, so they better not try to move it about too much.
As a spectacle, the professional game would be more interesting, would it not,
Oh,
if the
well,
ball didn't go as far?
I think people and the players enjoyed more seeing a 450-yard par 4, knowing that unless they flushed their drive, they'd be hitting a 2 or a 1-iron or a fairway wood for their second shot to a par 4. But nowadays, that's unheard of.
When you watch the modern golf these days, there are still some players who stand out, I think, who you could pick would be the ones. It wouldn't matter if you gave them a shovel.
Oh, because they can move the ball about.
Because they can play. Who do you enjoy watching of the men and of the women as well? I imagine you would have watched some of the Women's Open this past week?
Yeah, some of the girls swing the club beautifully. I think Minwoo Lee, is it? Mm-hmm. She's a beautiful player. Some of the Korean girls swing the club so well. Balance and rhythm, perfect. And with the men, there's some great swingers, a lot of them. But some of the guys I like watching, I like that the guy that won all the tournaments, Scotty
Scheffler, earlier this year, the world number one, yeah.
He gets into some of the most unusual positions at times, but he knows where the ball's going. He can move it this way, move it that way. He's got what I talk about to my players. He can feel, and he lets that control the feel.
You don't fluke your way to world number one, do you?
Oh, no.
You've got to be able to play.
And the other thing is the standard of putting. I know the greens are probably a lot better. I've played tournaments on greens years ago that they wouldn't play now. They'd walk off.
Wouldn't play them as fairways, some of them. Quite possibly, Alex, they'd complain about.
These guys, you can't just say the greens. They are just brilliant putters. You look at Scotty and these guys.
Smith, who you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Jordan
Cameron Smith
is one that
and Scotty Scheffler, he doesn't miss putts. 8-10 footers are gimmies. Now, I remember Peter Thompson and I flying back from Queensland after playing in the Queensland Open years ago. He said, it's a funny thing. He says, you and I have been brought up and live on how many fairways and greens you hit. He said, the only way we can be satisfied that we've played well is if we've hit just about every fairway and every green. He said, they go out there and they win some of these tournaments these days, these kids. He said, they hit no fairways, no greens, and they still have a better score than we do. Yeah. He said, the emphasis on short game has been growing and growing. He said, it's taking over the whole game. He said, you don't have to be a great striker anymore. And Thompson said that to me way back.
And the big-headed driver has probably just really made that even more.
Well, you can hit it badly, and it doesn't.
Nobody's a bad driver of the ball anymore. You whack it up there somewhere, and you can whack it up somewhere sort of near the green. What's your take on the modern state of the game, Alex? And before we turn the microphones on, we mentioned the live golf thing that's happening. Mm-hmm. What's your take on where modern professional men's golf is at the moment? And women's golf's in a different place, I think. But
well, I think the women's golf is getting better and better because they're hitting the ball as far as the men used to hit it with the old equipment, and they're playing the sort of golf that we had to learn to play like 60 years ago, 70 years ago.
And the golf courses is the other thing. The golf courses seem to be playing some are still
mostly designed more or less to suit that sort of game. But to make the golf courses suit the length they hit the ball with the clubs that are being designed, with the loft they have, the titanium-headed driver, and I'd get a big head if I used one of those. But they reduce the golf courses in a way that if they're good enough on their short game and their short irons, they can kill the course. Mm. Whereas, when you look back over the years and years of golf, it wasn't like that. You had to be a really good shot maker to get onto the green to be able to be a good putter. To look at golf now, to somebody who's been playing for a long time, isn't as good as it would have been if it had stayed it was. To the people who've never seen it played the other way, they think this is the way you should play. par fours 490 yards, driving a sand iron.
Including the players themselves now, Alex. We've now had 2 generations of players since anybody even saw a wooden-headed driver, let alone used one.
That's right.
There are players in the top 10 in the world who would never have competitively picked up a persimmon driver.
That's right.
Or a Ballata ball. That's a reasonably recent phenomenon. Up until the early 2000s, that wasn't the case, but it really has changed the game. What's more important, Alex, professional golf or the rank-and-file club member who plays every week for his whole life?
I think professional golf does a lot of good for the guys that can win money and look after their families, and some of them make a huge amount, which they don't need. And some are generous. They give a lot back, which is great. But the average club golfer, I think there's a lot of good in it for them if they're using it as an outlet when they're running businesses or doing what they're doing. The chance to get out in the fresh air and the open and play golf on the weekends or the days off must be something very precious, I think, to people. And I think it should be. And they should have that attitude that I'm not here to make money. I'm not even a pro. I'm here to enjoy the game.
How many of us do think that way, Alex? You've come across thousands of us in your life, club golfers. We spend most of our time miserable, don't we? Because we don't like the way we play.
Well, yeah, I'll say this. You sound like a person I can say this to. Most golfers look at top players and they think they should be able to do that too. They forget they've been sitting in an office for 10 years while he's been pounding practice balls all day for 10 years. And he's younger and fitter and he's a better player.
That's why we don't like him, Alex. What's to like about him? He's got nothing to offer. The other thing that strikes me about us amateur golfers, Alex, we all say we want to be better, don't we? We all say it constantly, don't we?
All the time. Yeah.
We'll do anything we can not to have to work to do that, won't we? We'll buy a new
that's
we'll
right.
buy some new
you think you can buy it. Yeah. Right. You can't buy it.
We won't work at it, will we?
And you think you can, by changing pros here and there and listening to television and watching stuff on computers that you'll play better. But it's easier than that, really. You've only got to get to the stage where you can make the contact with the ball fairly reasonably and go and practice till you can trust that. So when you play and you're looking at the shot, you give yourself a real good chance of bringing it off. You don't say, look, I'd like to play this shot, but I don't know where it's going.
but we'll have a go at it anyway because why wouldn't you? That's why we play. Well, you mentioned the P word there, which is very rude of you. Practice. None of us amateurs want to hear that.
No.
Alex, you've heard that before. That can't possibly be the answer. I've taken more of your time than I meant to. It's been fabulous to catch up with you. We haven't even touched on a quarter of the topics I wish I'd talked to you about, but it's been terrific of you to take some time. Really appreciate it.
No, it was good fun. Look, talking golf to me now is about as much as I can do with it. But there are a lot of young people come and ask me questions that I'm sure they need to know the answers to. And I enjoy talking to them, pros and young pros and people in the game, because if they're put on the right track now, they'll get some benefit later on. When I'm dead and gone, they'll still be getting some benefit from it.
You've made a career and a life of doing that.
That's right.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
A common theme emerges when you interview somebody with the wisdom and experience of Alex Mercer, and that is that you always walk away feeling like you only got a fraction of the story. I'm sure that's true, and I'm sure it's true in this case too, but I'm glad that we've captured what we did with Alex, and I hope that you enjoyed it as well. That's all for episode 73, but make sure to come back next time because we're in for a real treat from John Huggan on episode 74.
One of the most interesting things was at the end of the night, he shook my hand as we were leaving and wished me good luck in my career. And he said, Paul, just remember, in my career, I've spent 90% of my time losing at this game and 10% winning. And I'm the most successful that's played the game. Yeah. It's a tough sport. Be ready for it. Be ready for losing.
How did Paul McGinley come by that advice from Jack Nicklaus? Find out next time on The Thing About Golf.